Oh, that smile. So I have the absolute pleasure of introducing a powerhouse of purpose, passion, and impact, Janet Grima. Janet is volume down, is an award-winning CEO and a deeply respected leader in the non-for-profit space, bringing over 30 years of experience in fundraising, marketing, and communications. Her journey began back in 1996 at the Alfred Hospital, and since then she has held the key leadership roles with Western Health, SIDS, and Kids before stepping into her role as CEO of Bully Zero Australia in 2021. And what a time to take over that area, right in the midst of COVID. But with resilience, agility, and heart, Janet didn't just navigate uncertainty, she transformed it into opportunity. She successfully embedded a corporate partnership strategy that has since secured over 3 million in an Tide funding, powering Bully Zero's vital prevention programs. Janet is not only a strategic thinker, she's a storyteller, a change maker, and a leader who builds trust from the centre. She creates environments where people feel safe, valued, and heard, which couldn't be more important when tackling something as serious and widespread as bullying. From boardrooms to global stages, including her recent keynote at the Be Brave 2025 conference in Malta, Janet continues to lead conversations around well-being, courage, and taking whole decisions that truly put people first. She's into a familiar voice and face across media, advocating across schools, workplaces, sporting fields, and online spaces, driving meaningful, lasting change through collaboration and awareness. So tonight we're diving into leadership, resilience, and the real work behind bullying prevention with someone who lives and breathes the purpose. Please welcome the incredible Janet Grima.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Perfectly. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And if I'm saying this right, Christos Anesti?
Alethoso Kyrios. Thank you so much. Perfect. With a background as Italiano, come stai, signorina Griva?
Molto bene. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation today. And I know we spoke about this before. We know that, bullying isn't just something that happens in schools anymore. It's happening in workplaces, as you said, online,
Yes,
in communities, and often in ways that people don't even recognize.
That's exactly right. Let's touch on, before we touch on the real things that go on behind the scenes, let's touch on Mavs.
Yes.
Like, come on, what is it with this year?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, and everybody's like, really keen to talk, more about it, and to really, I guess, go into behind the scenes and what it's like. And I think what we're seeing isn't just media and TV. It's not just something that entertains us anymore. It's shaping what I think we normalize. And this season in particular, I think what we're seeing, or we have seen, are behaviours that many people would recognise as bullying, exclusion,
exactly right.
Intimidation, and the use of such harmful language. And
It's devastating. I can't believe the turn that it's taken. I mean, usually they'll focus on the male's behaviour. They focus on empowering women.
Yeah.
But this season, they really keyed in on the women. And from what your research has seen, women are becoming bullies.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable.
It really is. And I think what's been really interesting for me, and I think for the organisation, is the public response. People are actually calling it out, questioning the behaviours, and even pushing back. So I think, it tells us something really powerful, and that people know what's not okay. And I think the risk we have, especially when we're watching something on prime TV, is that we have to be careful that behaviour isn't normalised. And I think it's, shows like that can blur the line between drama and harm. But the fact that we're calling it out, we're talking about it, I think people are really starting to understand.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, because sometimes we can say, look, she's bullying someone, she's bullying somebody, and people say, I don't get it. I don't understand what's bullying, what's degrading, But you're absolutely right. They're calling it out. They're actually showing it.
Yeah.
and you can see the women that are on the show shocked at looking at themselves. And okay, we can say that they edit, and they do edit hard, because at the end of the day, it is a show. It
Yeah.
is all about the ratings. We've got to, remember, they do sign a
100%.
disclosure. They
Yeah.
do know what they're heading into. They've seen so many seasons.
Yeah.
However, the truth is, that's what's coming out of their mouths. They're not being told to speak like that or act like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for us at Bully Zero, it's not about cancelling the conversation. We look at it and go, it's moments like this where we want to ask, and we want the public to ask, well, what are we modeling? What are we reinforcing? Because I think, media is one of the most powerful teachers we have, whether we realize it or not. I would self-reflect when I'm watching that show going, my goodness, I hope that I never come across that way, or what's going on in that person's life that they feel that they have to speak that way. So shows like that teach us understanding. They give us perspective. They give us learning. But I think what we need to do is not normalize that behavior, especially for young people, because it can shape their understanding of relationships, I think maybe conflict and even respect.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right with what you're saying there, Janet. And a lot of the audience will be saying, well, they should can it. We're not watching it. We think it's ridiculous. But there's the flip side, as what you're saying is, if we do watch it, we're going to see what is acceptable behavior and what isn't acceptable behavior. And we can reflect and sit there and say, hang on, would I like someone to speak to me like that or treat me that way?
Yes.
Is that the right way to treat somebody? And, we spoke earlier on, and we talked about how it does stem from the top. We're adults. If we're not portraying right behavior, well, what are the teenagers and the young adults going to be doing? I mean, they're learning from us.
Correct. And I think that's the most important piece. We're born into this world not knowing what bullying is. It's a learned behavior. We're learning to be unkind, nasty, hurtful. But it's really easy to unlearn that behavior. And watching a show like that, for me, reinforces kindness always. Words matter always. The impact that I can have on someone by saying something so harsh can be devastating.
We also touched on, we did say that, and what you just said then about we're not born as bullies. Children are born with unconditional love. They're not born with racism. They're not born as bullies. They reflect how we act. If we give them a lot of love and smiling and nurturing behavior, they respond in the same way. So somewhere along the line, it goes wrong. Now, before we touch on that, I just want to, first of all, welcome you once again to the RPP FM, to the KK Factor, the Greek Eurobeat Show. Thank you so much. It's a big night for us here, because it's been a long time in the making to get you on, because you are very, very busy. So I do appreciate that you're taking the time. But I just want to tell the audience, and I'd like you to tell the audience, who Janet really is, because you might be the CEO of Bully Zero Australia. You've got that passion. You're in there for the purpose. But who is really Janet? Who are you, and the person behind that?
Yeah, probably one of the toughest questions somebody ever asked me live, because we often don't think about who we really are. We often answer those questions with, well, I'm the CEO, or I'm a journalist, or I'm an actress, or whatever it is. But the person behind me is someone who believes that kindness drives life, purpose drives life. Being really passionate about what we do, or what I do, is what motivates me. And, I think that comes from my upbringing. I had a family who were generous in spirit, generous in love, generous in kindness. And I think from quite an early age, my mum, bless her soul, taught me that it's very important to receive, but to also give when you're in a position to give. And ever since I was a little girl, I undertook to support community endeavours, to fundraise. It kind of changed the way my career developed as I grew up. So the person I am is someone who takes pride in making people feel seen, heard, valued and respected, because then I receive that back, if that makes sense.
Janet, you're also a sister. You're also a daughter.
Yes.
and you're also looking after or sharing the responsibility, although your father is living with your sister
Yes.
and he's got the onset of Alzheimer's. And a lot of the audience here that are listening to us know what that's all about. Um, and, you just said that your parents raised you with kindness and you're giving back now to your father. And it is hard work. So I want to ask how you're coping with all that, running a business and also being there for your father with such a dreadful disease,
Yeah.
which can make it very, very difficult to show the love and to feel that appreciation, because at times they're not going to know who you are or understand.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful a way to go into this whole experience of life. It's my dad's 86 and he's got dementia, where we can see now just how rapid that is setting into him, and watching someone who was so strong in his younger life not really know who we are anymore, not know how to respond, not wanting to take his medication, eat, wanting to sleep, and sometimes be hurtful in the way he speaks to us. It's not who he is, it's the disease. So the beautiful learning in this experience is that, we have to understand that if they knew that this is what the disease does to them, they wouldn't act this way. So managing, a father, and especially trying to support my sister, who is his full-time carer, it's really challenging to make sure that she feels supported, to make sure that he's taken care of, and that I'm functioning as a CEO and looking after my home life and my zoo of animals that I have at home. It's really challenging. And I think sometimes I look at myself and I know I'm high functioning ADHD, but it's really hard because your mind is operating in nanoseconds about what I have to do. It's like this constant list in my head of who I need to take care of, and I'm sometimes at the bottom of that list.
I talked earlier about the introduction about yourself and about being so strong and resilient. And if this is getting too much for you, this topic now talking about your father, I want you to let me know.
No, it's great.
I wanted to ask you, deep down, as resilient, as strong as you can be, you've trained, you've learned through all the experiences you have, but are there moments when you're not really coping with what's going on with your dad?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can give you a classic example, and I know we touched on it really briefly when I spoke to you earlier today. I talked a little bit about living in the nanosecond and having all of these things that are on my mind. And for that 1 second of being lost in everything that's going on in my life, I lost my train of thought and I was in a car accident. So I wasn't injured, and the person in the car accident as well wasn't injured, but it was the wake-up call for me that, you are trying to be the tough, resilient person that you are, and you're trying to cope. But that 1 second of your mind needing to take a moment to kind of reconcile what's going on, that was, I think, a bit of a wake-up call for me that I can't operate as this strong powerhouse all the time. I actually have to let myself go and feel the things that I need to feel. And even driving back from the office today, a song came on the radio and I was reaching for tissues because I just felt the emotional pull of that song. So, yeah, it can be tough. And I'm real too, so I do feel that stuff.
Absolutely. I just want to touch on and let you know, one of our listeners on the live chat, Alex Latudas, he's got a disability. He's the founder of Fusion Theatre, and that gives opportunity for people with disabilities to go and be in the theatre and,
Wow.
and show creativity. I have been to a live performance and it absolutely blew me away how the brain works. And he says, he's an actor and a few of his characters have been bullied. And he too, at the same time, is also a carer for his mum while he has his own challenges.
Yeah.
And they're all sort of, I call them the KK Factor live chat family. They all get on and they all join in and they all say hello each week, which is really great. If you're living at home alone, and it's just this live interaction, and they're all sort of supporting him. And I just want to say thank you to all those listeners that are doing that right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's the key thing you're saying, support, no matter what the situation is, whether that you're looking after an ill parent or you're experiencing bullying, whatever it is, support is the key word.
One of the listeners is also saying, if your mother is at that point and it's a difficult time for her,
Yeah.
is it the right time to put her into a home? Can you, as the daughters, are you both able to do that?
Yeah, and that's a discussion that we're having right now. And it's interesting. My dad is the European stubborn. The minute he's not feeling well, or he's talking about feeling really, really unwell, and we mention going to the hospital or considering a nursing home, he finds some fight in him, and he's like, no, I'm not ready to go, and I don't want that.
Wow.
But it is an important one because we have to consider his safety as well. So we can wrap ourselves around the clock for him, but are we able to give him what he needs as he starts to deteriorate more and more? No. So it is a conversation we are entertaining.
Wow. And I apologize because I accidentally referred him as her.
I
For
got
some
you.
reason, my mind went to my mother, but we
I
all
got
about
you.
your father, so my apologies.
No, I got you.
Let's go back now to the CEO of Bully Zero Foundation Australia.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that shaped your passion for tackling bullying?
Oh, yeah, there was. And I guess it wasn't dramatic in the way that people might expect. And we can all talk about situations of being bullied in school, but this particular case for me was a workplace bullying incident. It was subtle, it was persistent, and it was incredibly isolating. The kind that kind of makes you question yourself before you question the behavior. Like, I didn't think it was happening, but what struck me most wasn't just what was happening, it was what wasn't happening. No one named it, no one stepped in, and that silence, even after I left that organization, stayed with me, because what I learned is that bullying doesn't just exist in the behavior. It exists in the environments that allow it to continue. So my colleagues and the people that I trusted allowed it to continue. And I feel like that's what drives me now. This isn't about one person being bad. I think it's about systems, cultures, and everyday choices. So that experience for me has really shaped the way I tackle bullying now.
Wow, you actually touched on a sensitive memory of mine, of myself, and I will share it live, where I was working for an organization and I was being bullied. And as you said, no one called it out. And it wasn't because they didn't care. It's the fear of, if I call it out, will I lose my job? Because we did see people that called out certain behavior did lose their job. They were pushed out in an indirect way.
Yeah.
And let's face it, when we're financially driven to work, we sometimes do things that we later go home and think, I shouldn't have done that. I should have spoken up. But at the same time, I can't lose my job.
Yeah.
I was bullied to the point where I fought as well, because I'm a very strong character. I wanted to maintain my work there. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to do certain things. And it got to the point one day that it got too much for me. And I remember going into the toilets and there was an extra area for showers. And I basically fell on the ground and I was like literally hugging myself and just rocking, just crying, quietly and rocking. That was not me. I look at that moment and think back, what just happened to Roula? That's not who Roula is. And one of my colleagues walked in and she saw me and I said to her, do not say anything. Again, it was like, it's got to be called out, but if you say something, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose my job?
And that's a question everybody asks.
Yes. So again, it was me fighting to keep that job. And I remember going up to the CFO and told him exactly what happened. He knew it was happening.
Yeah.
And I said to him, get me out of this environment. Now, when I look at this part, the next step, it was actually really funny because the next steps were, let's put her into this department and have her to do this project. So there was about 4 or 5 different projects I was taken to. And each step they thought was, this way she'll collapse and she'll leave.
Yes.
But what was happening was I was taking that role to another level. I kept progressing and kept going, which led to me to have one of my biggest key positions, which makes my resume look so good. But it also showed me my capabilities and a skill set that I didn't have. But not many people can actually do that, because I started having anxiety. I started having these emotions that I never had before whilst fighting, But
Yes.
I did leave that environment. But when I think back, and I do keep in touch with a lot of people, as you said, it's not one or two people. Sometimes it's the culture of the place.
100%.
It's the people above that
Yep.
all know what's going on and allow it to happen.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that just baffles me, because we have ministers, we have people that are in place to stop this, and yet it's not happening.
No.
They've put now in place that if there's harm, you could be up for murder. You're going to be charged.
100%.
No
Especially
one's
if there's
going
a
to be charged.
suicide.
Yeah, suicide, bullying, you're going to be charged. But
Yes.
again, you have to prove it, and you need witnesses to prove it.
Yeah.
And those key witnesses may also be too afraid.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's why it's about that cultural change. And, when you just said in your story that, you stepped up when they tried to challenge you, when they gave you more complex work, it's exactly my situation. So they were trying to find a way for me to break, and I didn't. And so when they were pulling at strings to get rid of me, the reason that they tried to get rid of me was an unfair dismissal claim. But it wasn't the unfair dismissal claim that gave me power. The power was in my voice when they asked me, well, what's your rationale? Why should we keep you here? In those 15 seconds that I had time to think about, do I really want to answer that question? Do I really want to work for an organization that is asking me that question? And I actually found my power, and I said, this conversation stops. I don't want to work here anymore. Grabbed my keys, grabbed my things, walked out, cried my eyes out on the street, calling my partner saying, come and get me. But I found my voice that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're working for these organizations, and on the Are You OK Day, those very same people walk around with trays and give out certain things, and you just look at them and smile, and you say to yourself, what are you doing? How do you sleep at night? But it happens.
And it's not about one day, Roula. It's not. We have to be practicing good behavior, good culture every day.
Every day.
Yep.
Those people that are listening in right now and do see bullying happening around their workplace, what can they actually do? Because they're listening to both of us. They've heard both our stories. Yeah. It continues to happen, although now there are legislations that put in place. It's a criminal, it's a crime. But what can they actually do now with things that have been put in place?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, whether you're a victim, whether you're seeing it, you're witnessing it, I think it's really important to call it out safely, I think, and wrap yourself around resources that get you to understand what's actually happening. On our website, we have a bunch of resources for employees that help you kind of navigate situations like that. And we do go out to workplaces and have these conversations to help them build those cultures of safety. But I think it's really important to value you and to make sure that you're feeling respected and that you can contribute safely. That's the key word. It always has to be safe. And so I think...
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
So where would people go to learn about that or to take action?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to our website, so it's www.bullyzero.org.au, there's a section for workplaces and resources. We've got a bunch of toolkits in there that can help you, one, understand what bullying is and what it isn't. There's some statistics around what's happening and what the cost of the economy is, but there's a really great employee resource guide. It's like a 28-page document that's got some tools and resources within it that help people who are within the workforce understand and, how to navigate it, how to report it, how to communicate the situation. It's really powerful stuff.
So now you can confidently say that there are tools out there that can help people. There are lawyers out there that will look to fight, because I can tell you that I've also experienced certain organisations where people can report. Now, this is in the past. But it's kind of like not a conflict of interest, but it's like the organization you work for are in line with them. And it's like you're fighting a losing battle. Like they know that you're not lying, but for whatever reason, they're not going to support you.
Yeah. And the key thing is to just document everything, dates, what's happening. If you're getting to a point where your mental health is affected, please don't sit with it. Go see a doctor, get some advice, talk to someone that you trust. Start that conversation really early. Because I think it's important to try and nip it in the bud. I mean, we have workplace programs where we have facilitators who go out to workplaces and run programs on bullying, intimidation, and harassment, and look at trying to build those safe cultures. So it's a 360-degree type of thing. We need people who are working in organizations to speak up. We need leaders of organizations to take this issue serious. It's not, it can be physical. It's not just mental.
That's right.
Yeah, we need to do something about it.
What do people get wrong about bullying?
I think, what we have to understand in the workplace is that not everyone's going to like you. And, it's okay to not be liked.
That's right.
And I think you just have to understand, performance reviews. If you're receiving feedback in a professional way about the way you operate, it's not bullying. So I think what people get wrong is the definition.
Or is it that a lot of organizations need training in areas of that aspect where they know how to deliver feedback? Because I have met people that give feedback, but the way that feedback is given, it can hurt a person. 100%. Like I always say, I like the sandwich where you say the positive, the negative, which is what we're going to focus on, and then another positive to finish the conversation. 100%. But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of organizations and leaders don't do that. So maybe there's not enough training. I can say with the organization I work for full time, they're above all of that. Their people come first.
Yeah,
there's a lot of training, Janet. It's not just these are our values. We follow our values. I see every day the modules that leaders have to do. We have to do. In our behavior and learning how to relay messages, how to lead our team. And if organizations aren't going to put in their budget that type of training, we will have people that want to suicide because it's getting too much for them because something was not delivered correctly with empathy and passion.
100%. And people in your company are your greatest asset. So why are you not investing in those people, investing in making them feel safe and secure and able to express themselves respectfully as well? I think, we have to understand that they are your greatest asset. Feed that greatest asset. Let that asset grow. It's so important, and wrap yourselves around. It's not hard to get education in around bullying and intimidation and harassment. It's not just a policy. We have a policy ticket. Has everyone read it? We need to talk about this all the time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That is exactly right. You've spoken about just now about people and feeling safe and working in a safe environment, feeling valued, respected. What do you think that would actually look like if we can achieve that?
Oh, such a great question. If we could achieve that, I think what we're going to do is it becomes the baseline. I think respect then becomes the baseline. It's not the exception. People are not having to shrink themselves to feel safe anymore. Leaders just don't talk about culture. They're actually modeling it. And where kindness isn't seen as soft anymore, it's now seen as a strength. So I think, that's what it's going to look like. It's just going to be natural. Culture is built in the smallest moments now. How we speak to people is really great, and how we respond under pressure is respectfully. And what we walk past, we don't leave if it's not the right thing that we're seeing. Change doesn't happen in policies, I believe. It happens in behavior. So I think that's what we're going to see when we start creating that world where people feel safe.
Let's touch on social media.
Yeah.
Because as we spoke earlier on today, we mentioned how a lot of us will wake up in the morning and the first thing we do is we get onto social media and we start scrolling.
Yeah, doom scrolling.
Yep, and we're doom scrolling.
I do
And,
it. I've done it.
we do hope that most of the time it's positive things we're going to see, but a lot of the times we don't.
No.
And sometimes it comes from people that we know very well, and we do fall into that trap. And we do read negativity. Look, I'm one that, I read something and I go back and I say, how can you say that? That's not how it is. This is how it is. Why would you promote something like that? Let's give out the facts,
Yeah.
What do you think with social media out there? How do we tackle something like
Look,
that? I mean, we're adults, and we're just talking about adults. We haven't even touched on teenagers, let alone.
It's the same. I think, look, social media has become so sophisticated, and in many ways more dangerous because it's not always obvious. What we're seeing on social, media is exclusion. It's a particular tone. It's a power dynamic. It's who said what in a group chat, or what's not said, or what do I need to look like, or what do I not need to look like. And with social media, sadly, it just doesn't stop now. It's 24/7. It follows people home. It's constant. It's public. And sadly, as we spoke about earlier with maths, we're seeing behaviours that used to be dismissed as drama now being recognised for what they are, which is great. So we're seeing manipulation, coercion, intimidation. And I think that's the piece of work that we do at Bully Zero around awareness, and why it matters so much. We're ingesting stuff, like I said, in the nanosecond. And when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is, look at social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever app you're using, you're ingesting someone else's feed, someone else's drama, someone else's issues, someone else telling you that you may not be good enough before you've even started your day.
Exactly.
So you've got to think about the impact that has on you and how you start your day and how you work throughout that day. So I think we've just got to understand and build awareness around that social media isn't the driver for who we are as people. It's a tool. It should be a tool. But sadly, and I've done it myself, so I can't just say I'm not one of those. I can doom scroll, and then I look at it and go, oh my goodness, I've just wasted an hour of my time. Am I feeling great after what I've watched? No, I'm not.
No, I love how you refer to it as doom scroll.
Yeah.
That's I really do like that. As you were talking about that, I had a reflection, memory long time ago, schoolyard, the differences then. We didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have social media.
Yeah.
Back then it was verbal, and it used to be, and the words, and I apologize in advance if anyone takes offense, but, I'm Greek. They used to call me a wog, and I would call the Australian skippies. And this used to be, now when we say those words, we have a laugh about it. It's not in a way that's bringing anyone down. But back then, that was our bullying. You're a wog. You're a skip. You're this. You're that.
Yeah, a little bit of fisticuffs and that would be over, right?
Yeah. But I think we were more resilient then, or was it a little bit different to social media?
Well, I think, you were dealing with the bullying in 6 hours of your school day. So when you got home, if you weren't in an environment that, was a bullying environment, it was done. You were with your family. You didn't have this in your back pocket. The bully is now in your back pocket. It's with you 24/7. So that's the difference. And we've shifted it now to cyberbullying. We've shifted it with more hurtful words. We've shifted it with more harassing behaviour, criminal behaviour in many cases. I don't know if any of you listening or watching right now have seen some of the news stories of young girls at school filming themselves beating up on each other.
Yes, that's shocking.
That's beyond bullying. In my terms, that is criminal behaviour.
That is criminal behaviour, absolutely. Talking about criminal behaviour, Okay, so we've got parents that will be saying, how do I stop my child by being on social media? I don't like this. Then all of a sudden the government cracks down and says, okay, from this age group, no young will be on social media.
Yep.
Europe is now also embracing what Australia is doing. It's going slowly global. And then you've got people online saying, what a ridiculous thing. And it's like, if we want this behaviour to stop, we all need to support the government's reasoning and direction.
Yeah.
And we need to talk to our children, our teenagers, our youngsters, and tell them, like it's similar to what we're saying, adult time, adult crime. We've had people screaming and saying, look at this crime increase, look what these kids are doing. And the moment we put something in place, oh, you can't do that?
Yeah.
Well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think it's great to put a 15-year-old in jail. But on the flip side, no, that person should go in jail for what they've done.
Yeah. And on the other flip side of that, Roula, is having conversations with parents.
That's exactly what I was saying. The
parents
parents.
suicided. I have those conversations with those parents. I have conversations with parents whose kids were on the brink of suicide. Now, I'm not saying that, legislation is going to solve the whole bullying epidemic that we have. This is all about education. And we run programs for parents. They're parents-only sessions where we drill into what your kids are actually doing on social media, why they won't tell you if they're being approached by a predator. What's the first thing a kid's going to say to you if a parent's going to do if a kid comes up to you and says, I've had a really weird request online from a strange man, you're going to take that device away from them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they think. So it's like, I'm not going to tell mum and dad.
We need to let parents know that the games that they're playing, whether it's on Roadblocks or whether they're watching things on YouTube, it's all open to discussions, predatorial behavior. It's open to inappropriate content. And when a child or a parent is providing access to a young person who's under the age of 16 to access these kind of apps, we have to remember that if a 10-year-old has access to an Instagram, in the eyes of Instagram, they think that young person is 16, so they're being fed 16-year-old content. Exactly. So we need to be thinking about what that content is doing to that brain.
Exactly.
It's so important.
What impact does 24/7 exposure have on young people's mental health?
Oh, heaps. You're having sleeping issues. You're having the ability of kids not wanting to go to school. There's anxiety. There's a whole bunch of things here. We have learning difficulties. I can keep going on and on for hours about what that does to somebody.
What signs should parents look out for?
Again, it's the restlessness, the not sleeping, the not eating. If they are not wanting to participate in things they would normally participate in, not wanting to go to school, locking themselves away in their room. Our biggest piece of advice to parents is don't let your kids have their devices in their bedrooms at night. Put them somewhere away from their bedrooms.
So do we maybe need to create courses for parents, online courses, face-to-face course?
We do that.
So you do that. So
we do that.
We're teaching parents, instead of saying to your child, look, if a predator's online, that's it, I'm taking the device from you. They have a different approach so that the child trusts the
correct
to be able to tell them.
That's the solution. Once you build education in, if you want to give your child access to a device, that's fine. But make sure that your young person or your child feels safe enough to approach you when something's not okay. It's not about taking the device away. It's not about punishing them for that, for that experience. It's about how do we navigate this world together so you feel safe.
Now, there's sometimes a belief that bullying is just part of growing up. Because I've spoken to parents and they'll say, oh, she or he, they'll grow out of it. I've got this strong belief of, like, I'll give you an example now, my grandkids. Mm-hmm. So there's two sisters and the older one would push and shove and hit and take and this and that. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, if this behavior doesn't change, she'll continue this because she'll think I can get away with it. Yep. There's no repercussions. So when the younger sister was able to do stronger movements. She started actually kicking and hitting. And I thought, this is perfect, because the older one is learning that if I upset the younger one's actually fighting back and hurting me. So they're learning indirectly there's repercussions.
Yes.
You're going to cop what you've given.
Yeah, and they're learning to get what they want.
Yeah, I've seen the little one like slap and kick. Now, no one's taught her to slap or kick.
Yeah.
But this is her self-defense mechanism. And I'm like going, you know what? I love this. I'm not going to stop this, because this is the way they're going to learn. So as they get older, they know that if I'm going to attack someone older, and as I'm getting older, they're going to attack me back. And, and I've now seen that the behavior is changing. It's getting better. Whereas my biggest fear was, if no one fights back, because I have heard parents go, no, she will outgrow this. It's their way of communicating.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, no, mate, no. You got to nip it. Because
you have to nip it, because words and physical action.
Yeah.
Words and physical can have long-term consequences, and that's what we need to think about. We think that someone might be resilient enough to cop a beating or to cop some really harsh words, but are they really?
Yeah, or you've got the parents who say, look, I'm going to have a nice little chat to my child. It's about talking nice and this and that. And I'm thinking, that does not work. That's not going to – they know. They know if I do something naughty, I'm going to be put in the naughty corner. I'm going to be spoken to with a nice, calm voice.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. When it comes to that type of behavior, I think that it needs to be nipped. It needs
consequences
to be,
for actions.
Consequences where the parent has to change their tone a little bit.
100%.
So they know that this is absolutely wrong.
Yeah, and to walk them through why it's wrong, and to take time to think about the person who's receiving it. When I get upset about something, or when I feel angry about something, and, I want to have a go or whatever, I always stop and think, well, that response is really about me. It's not about anyone else, and I'm just going to hurt someone else if I do that. And what's the repercussion for that person going to be? It's the same thing with maths. All those things that were said, how have they hurt that person off camera?
Exactly.
What's the actual consequence?
Well, a lot of them are losing their jobs. We read about all that.
Yeah.
That's going to scar them for a very long time, because it was out in the public. It's not even behind a wall at work or behind a door within their home.
And open to judgment, Roula. If you read the comments on posts and you read what people are saying, it's that behavior is open to judgment. It's open to opinions. It could be right, it could be wrong, but it's harmful. Words matter. They matter. What we hear, what we say, what we see, it all affects how we operate.
Exactly. Going back to touching on the young when we're born, and we're, loving, unconditional love, we're young children, and all of a sudden we start becoming little bullies. We go to school, we're bullies. Look, a lot of us can say that, it's something's going on at home. It could be they're being bullied at home. It could be there's violence at home, a lot of negative things happening at home. Some parents will say, well, hang on, I'm upbringing my child really well. There's none of that happening in my home, but why is my child a bully? Sometimes, is it right for me to say that sometimes bullying can also be from a positive thing? As an example, you have a broken family.
Yeah.
But the child is still raised in a loving environment. But the child is not in that family unit that once was mum and dad living together, okay? And then they go to school, and they've got their best friends who are still got mum and dad living together.
Yep.
And I believe some kids will start bullying, and it's not because they're bullies from something negative at home, but it's that it's that hurt of, you have this that I want and I don't have it anymore.
100%.
Your mum and dad can buy you a mobile phone, mine doesn't. So out of that envy of, why can't I have this, or why isn't my life like yours, they become bullies.
100%.
So is it right then that teachers need to be taught the signs where they're also allowed to speak to a parent and say, okay, look, don't attack me, don't bite me, I'm the teacher, I've got your child for X amount of hours and I've seen this behaviour. Your child's not a bad child, but I'm seeing this behaviour. Yeah. Can we openly talk about what's going on at home? Yeah. I'm not saying that there's bullying or violence at home? Is there something else that's going that maybe I need to be aware of? And maybe this child is reacting that way, because that way the teacher can become more nurturing and have different conversations.
Yeah.
And then the parents or parent or, the co-parents can have conversations, because I believe if they work together,
Yeah.
they can help that child revert back to being the loving child and having an understanding, rather than, why have you got this and I hate you because you have that and I don't.
Yeah, it's a tough gig, especially for teachers. They're trying to balance so much. And, we often try to come up with strategies in the office. How do we help? How do we help schools? How do we help teachers? And, we've been talking about, a code of conduct where parents and young people, when they're, entering the school, get to understand, and year on year, they're participating. And this is how we need to behave. This is how we need to respect. And this is how we need to take accountabilities for our behaviours. And we need to equip teachers with more resources, more support.
Are they equipped enough to handle modern bullying challenges?
I think, at the moment, no. I think, the policies and procedures, as I said, they're there. But how do we take those policies into positive action? That's around, that's around empowerment and change, positive change. And I think that's where we need to come up with a better system to support a very fractured system.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
For a child experiencing bullying right now, what is the most important first step that they should take?
Yeah, I think this is where it shifts from awareness to action. And I think the biggest myth that I probably want to break is that you don't have to be the hero. You have to have a role, and it might look like quietly checking in with someone, interrupting the behaviour in a safe way, or simply not participating in it. Because even sometimes, small actions are a powerful signal. It says this isn't okay. And we hear this all the time from young people. What they remember most isn't just what happened to them, it's whether someone stood beside them. So that's the difference, I think, for someone feeling alone and someone feeling seen. It's about being safe all the time. And if you can't, go find a trusted adult. Don't be the hero.
On the flip side,
Yeah.
how can we guide children who may be engaging in bullying behaviour to change the course? What's the first step that we can take? I know there's different steps, but in the first instance.
Yeah, look, I always say awareness is probably the starting point. I know that action is what creates change, but building awareness around what that behaviour is, and that's one of the most successful parts of our program. We're out delivering bullying prevention programs to schools across the country, day in, day out. And I think if we can build awareness around the issue, not just of bullying, about what kindness is, what about, what resilience is, I think that's the starting point. Getting them to think about that behaviour. It's that what creates change. And I think don't just sit with it, act on it. That's our message. Always act on behaviour that's seen unkind.
Well, what strategy have you seen that actually work in reducing bullying long term, particularly in the different communities that you've worked with?
Education. It's always, and it's not just the tick box exercise. We've done one of Bully Zero's bullying prevention programs. You need to be doing that constantly, and not just in schools, in workplace. It's reinforcing that message, because that's what changes culture, right? The more you see it, the more you do it, the more it becomes normalized.
Earlier on when we talked, we spoke about children learning about kindness.
Yeah.
And I did I did read not long ago, I can't remember now which country, so I do apologise to the audience. However, it is happening. They've actually put in place, from early learning education and onwards, about kindness. They've put that into the curriculum, teaching kids about kindness.
Yeah.
And I know some people might think how ridiculous, but if we really think about it from a logical aspect and think about what's actually going on out there and what may not be going on at home, perhaps it's not as ridiculous, because if the teachers are teaching it in a professional manner where there's a lot of psychology put into it, in the way you feed it to the child, the way you teach that child could actually go home and say, Mum, Dad, that's not nice.
Yep.
That behaviour is not nice.
Yep, they're calling it out. And I mean,
but in a nice way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of psychology. You can't just write it out.
No, you can't.
I think psychologists need to work with
100%. And think about your actions. If you commit an act of kindness, how does that make you feel? Incredible. The minute you do something that feels unkind, you feel awful. That's just a basic feel. Like straight away, if I pat a dog on the street when I'm, going for, I feel great about that. Now, if I ask a dog to move away because it's on my footpath, in the way of my walking track, that's unkind. I feel yuck.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important. That's basic psychology. If we can't get that right, that's where we're going wrong.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing conversation with you.
I've loved it. Thank you so much.
If every parent, teacher, student listening tonight could take away just one action to help stop bullying, what do you think it could be?
I think for me, and this is something that runs in my head every day, what we normalize, we multiply. So let's choose to model something better. And kindness is so easy to model. That's my nugget.
Janet, you're amazing. I thank you so, so much for your time.
Thank you,
Roula.
I
think we'll be in touch quite regularly.
Absolutely.
Thank you once again. Thank you and welcome to RPP FM, and thank you to the fam who's been sending some great feedback.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah, Alex, what I say, even bullies can change, or being bullied by an older bully.
100% bullies can change.
Tony says from Sydney, that happened to at our son's school. It just made us very sick. What that poor girl went through. No child should go through this at all. You send your child to school and you don't even know if they are safe. That's obviously in relation to the discussion we did a little bit earlier. So I thank everybody for everything that they've been sending across. Thank you so much.
And reach out to our team at any time. Jump on our website. We're there to support you in any capacity.
Yeah, so it's
bullyzero.org.au.
Yeah. Bully Zero Australia, Bully Zero Foundation Australia.
We just say Bully Zero. So just Bully Zero. And even if you just type Bully Zero in Google, you will find us.
That's it. That's all it takes.
Wonderful.
Janet, thank you once again.
Thank you, listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
That was the awesome Janet Grima, CEO of Bully Zero Foundation Australia. Absolutely amazing. And it was a long time in the making because of her work, because of her personal life, as we did touch on. And I do truly appreciate her for being so vulnerable, opening up about who she really is. And thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody that's also listening via Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Thank you so, so much on 98.7, 98.3 FM. Tony, thank you. Tony writes, thanks, Janet. Great interview, darling. God bless you and your beautiful, gorgeous family. Thank you so, so much to you all. Let's go on to a really beautiful song, which I believe is very fitting after this particular interview, and it is Greeklish. So this also goes out to Janet. It's Agapi by Ricky.